In this video, you're going to learn the essential, but sometimes hidden, even secret skills that you need as a bass player to gig. Hi, I'm Luke from Become a Bassist, and if you want to know what it takes to gig regularly as a bass player, then stick around to learn exactly what you need to work on. If you're starting to get confident in your playing, it's completely natural to want to go public with it and start taking some real-world gigs. There are a lot of benefits of doing this. You'll learn an absolute ton doing it. You'll get to play music with friends. You'll be able to make new friends probably. Play great music for people who want to hear it. Plus you can actually make decent money working as a musician because bass players are always in high demand. It's probably because there are relatively few of us. So I want to walk you through 4 different gigging scenarios and give you a peek behind the curtain so you can learn what it really takes to gig as a bass player. By the way, I'm not going to be talking about important but kind of superficial things like playing in time, knowing your instrument and grooving with a drummer. Just being a good enough bass player is kind of expected at a bare minimum. In some respects, just being good enough won't actually cut it because everyone at the high levels can already play, so the softer skills become more important. If you can't cover the basics on your bass just yet, then that's a sign that you may not be ready to gig yet. And if that sounds like you, then I'd suggest you level up your skills with my beginner's starter pack. But if you are ready to start digging in, then let's dive in. The first common gigging scenario is kind of local shows at bars or sports clubs, wherever you are. This is how I got started gigging myself, and this is where a lot of people begin. In my case, there was a local band in the town I was living who played at this kind of absolute dive of a bar most weekends, and I kind of slotted in there playing covers, usually pretty badly, of rock songs that we liked, and sometimes the people at the bar even liked them too. So what's the secret with these kinds of gigs? Is it having the perfect bass for the songs? Is it how you look on stage? The PA, the sound gear you use? It's actually none of these things. The thing that will make the biggest impact in this situation is the ability to read a crowd and select the right songs for that crowd. All those other things are important, but song selection is a key for these kinds of gigs. Why? Well, think about it. Most of these kind of gigs where there are people there, but they're not there specifically to see the band, but the band is there anyway, the music can make or break the venue. If you play songs that people aren't into, they'll leave. They won't spend any more money at that venue. You might say, so what? But if the venue isn't making money, then they can't afford to pay you. And even if you're playing for a small fee or even no money, which is something I don't recommend for these kinds of gigs, the venue is still losing out if you're driving people away with your song choices. But if you figure out what songs keep people at the venue, then you'll always have work. I've played gigs before where the venue said their crowds usually wanted kind of current top 40 kind of tunes, but if the crowd was a little bit older and they respond better to older songs, then we change our approach to keep the crowd and the venue happy. Everybody wins. Song selection is king. Alright, the second gigging scenario we're going to go digging into is playing corporate events, and I would include things like weddings and agency work in this category as well. A lot of the time, this kind of work is quite lucrative. You can make a fair bit of money doing it, but you need to do things right. The first secret skill when it comes to this kind of work is ultra professionalism. If someone is paying you to play at their function or their wedding, they're probably going to pay you a lot more, but in return, they're going to expect a lot more of you. You can't just be showing up half an hour before you're supposed to play wearing kind of tattered clothes and smelling like you haven't showered in a week. You need to be on time, usually hours before you're even supposed to play your first note. Think of the planning that goes into a kind of corporate event or a wedding. For the fee that these kind of groups charge, it should absolutely be zero stress for whoever's organizing it. If I'm playing a gig like this, I aim to be set up and ready to roll at the very least, an hour before we need to start making sound, sometimes multiple hours before. The other really important aspect has absolutely nothing to do with the actual music, but has a huge effect on the impact of your performance, and that's how good of a show you put on and how well you present yourself. You just simply can't afford to stand there like a lame duck playing your bass in jeans that are falling apart and smelling bad. If a company has spent thousands of dollars to book you, or a couple has spent a lot of money to book you, they're going to want you to actually entertain the people there and look good doing it. Some people get really indignant about this. They'll say things like, well, if it sounds good, it shouldn't matter what it looks like. And frankly, the people who say these kind of things, they're missing the point. If they just wanted the sound, they could put on a freaking iPod. Instead, they dropped tons of money into booking a band because they want a performance. They want entertainment, so it's your responsibility to give it to them. Now, I'm not saying you have to be completely over the top doing backflips, playing with your teeth, or kind of pelvic thrusting your way across the stage. And of course, you don't want the presentation of the music to affect the sound. But if you just kind of stand there like a statue, it's boring to watch. But even if you're kind of bobbing your head along, tapping your foot, moving your body a little bit with the music, that's enough to get people engaged. The other thing, don't forget to smile. People used to say this to me all the time. You should smile more when you play. And to be honest, this used to really piss me off, especially because it usually came from people who weren't musicians. I used to be one of those people who said idiotic things like, oh, the sound is what matters, not what I look like. But I was wrong. My presentation absolutely mattered. It still matters, and it's especially important to a non-musician. Now, when I play, I make it a point to express how much fun I'm having on stage. It's a way to invite people into what you're doing, and it makes for a much better performance, which means it's going to be a better gig. The third scenario is playing reading gigs. These are things like theatre shows, touring acts that need a local musician, cruise ship gigs that require reading, anytime you have to read music to get through the gig. Again, these can be quite lucrative, especially once you get to the higher levels. But once again, doing this comes with its own set of challenges. Obviously, your reading has to be rock solid, or you won't even get your foot in the door. That's just one of those things that's the price of admission. The real challenge and the real kind of secret skill of this kind of gig, though, is discipline. If you do these kind of gigs, you'll be sitting reading notation for hours at a time. And a lot of the time, if you're playing in a pit orchestra, you'll spend big chunks of time not playing at all. You may have to rest for hundreds of bars during a song, or even sit out entire songs back to back to back. It can be easy to get distracted, lose your place, and then mess something up. And if you make a mistake and then mess an entrance up for a singer, you'll be everyone's worst enemy. The director, the conductor, the performers on stage, the rest of the people you're playing with, they can all turn on you if you mess with the show, even if it's accidental. It can be a very high pressure environment. But if you're disciplined and reliable, stay on top of everything the entire time you're playing, you'll get called back again and again and again. All right, finally, let's talk about original music. Now, this is a very different kind of beast, and the gigs that originals groups play are usually much different than the things we've talked about so far. So let's talk about musical skills first. When you're playing in an original project, you either need to be an active contributor to the group's sound, or there might be some kind of band leader who tells you what they want, and you have to try and give it to them. I've been part of both kinds of groups, and they can both be really fun. The key skills that you need for these kind of gigs is an endless well of creativity and the ability to be flexible. If you've got a band leader who's trying to tell you that they want a different kind of sound, it might not always be completely clear what they want. It's your job to keep giving them ideas and slowly work towards the sound they hear in their mind. They may even get really esoteric about it, and it might not make a lot of logical sense, but it's your job to keep modifying what you're doing to suit them and to never ever say, I don't know what you want. You need to keep coming up with different ideas, different approaches until something sticks, even if it takes a while. Now, if you're an active contributor in an original project, the secret skill is that of flexibility and compromise. When there are lots of different creative people getting together to make something new, there are always bound to be a few clashes in opinion. You might find yourself at odds with another member over the direction of the song, or something as minute as a harmony on one note. Apparently that was the catalyst for Crosby, Stills and Nash breaking up at one point, a single harmony note. But if you can keep a cool head and be flexible with the details of the vision, you'll be in a much better place when it comes to an original music group. Now, if you're in the position where you have to book your originals group, you have to go out and get gigs for yourself, that requires a whole different set of skills. You've got to be a good communicator, you've got to be organized, you've got to be good with people. But the two most important skills when you start doing this are consistency and resilience. Why these two? Well, because if you're just starting to book original projects, chances are you're going to hear no a lot of the time. Even if you're just trying to get on the same bill as other groups who might have a similar audience, at the start, you'll probably hear no quite a bit. If you approach venues, you'll also probably get a lot of no's to begin with. Or even worse, they just won't get back to you. In the face of relentless rejection, you have to remain consistent and resilient. Otherwise, You'll want to stop before the project gets anywhere. You may have to start playing at small shared bill shows, then work up to being the headliner for those kind of gigs, then your own gigs, then out of town shows, eventually up to festivals, recordings, radio shows, all that kind of stuff. If you're not consistent with it though, and fairly resilient, you may not last very long. Now, if you're looking to score and hold some gigs as a bass player, like I said at the start of the video, you've got to have your skills already pretty well developed. You can't go in sort of knowing how to play, or you won't be able to keep the gig, especially at a more professional level. So if you're just starting out and need some guidance for how to get your actual skills to the point where you're ready to start gigging, check out my beginner's starter pack. It's a collection of some of my best material specifically curated for the beginner. You learn exactly what to focus on and the order to do it in to get gig ready as quickly as possible. It's all free, so to get it, just click the link in the description, sign up on that page, and I'll send it straight to you, 100% free. You're gonna love it. To recap really quickly though, you learned about 4 common gigging scenarios and the secret skills you need to keep and get those kind of gigs. For a standard bar type gig, the secret skill was song selection and reading the audience, so you make sure people stay in the venue. For corporate wedding or agency gigs, the secret skills were ultra professionalism and making sure you put on a good show. For reading gigs, it was discipline and maintaining focus for long periods of time. And finally, when you're working on original music, the essential skills are constant creativity and compromise. And if you ever start booking these kind of gigs, the skill then shifts to being resilient and consistent. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Makes me really happy when you make it all the way to the end of these videos, so thank you again. Make sure and check out that beginner starter pack if you want to level up your skills to be gig ready. I would love to see you in there. I'm Luke from Become a Bassist, and I'll talk to you soon.